As whispers grow louder and the winds of Vatican City shift, the world is bracing for what could be one of the most pivotal transitions in Catholic Church history. Who will wear the white? Who walks closest to Peter's path today? These are the 10 top frontrunners to become the next pope, and what their selection could mean for the faithful, the Church, and the world. With over 1.3 billion Catholics watching and waiting, the transition of papal leadership is never just a formality, it is a moment charged with spiritual gravity, global consequence, and divine discernment. Today's cardinals are not only spiritual shepherds, they are geopolitical figures, theological trailblazers, and guardians of centuries-old doctrine. As speculation swirls around the health and tenure of Pope Francis, these 10 cardinals have emerged as the men most likely to ascend to the throne of St. Peter. Let's explore who they are, and why they matter. 1. Cardinal Peter Erd, Hungary. Cardinal Peter Erd is a towering figure in the Church, deeply respected for his theological acumen and unwavering commitment to Catholic tradition. Serving as the Archbishop of Esztergom Budapest, Erd holds one of the most influential ecclesiastical positions in Hungary and, by extension, Central Europe. He is also the Primate of Hungary, a title that carries with it both historical weight and a clear connection to the heart of European Catholicism. Known for his brilliant legal mind, Erd is a canon lawyer of considerable renown. His knowledge of church law is unparalleled, and his ability to navigate the complexities of the Vatican's canonical system has earned him admiration across the globe. His expertise is often sought in Vatican circles, especially for matters concerning doctrine, governance, and church-state relations. As a theological conservative, Erd appeals to those within the Church who seek a return to doctrinal clarity and orthodoxy. His deep reverence for Catholic tradition and the teachings of the Church Fathers makes him a natural ally for those looking to preserve the faith's timeless values. He has also been an outspoken proponent of defending the sanctity of life, marriage, and family, as well as championing religious freedom in the face of rising secularism. Fluent in several languages, including Latin, Erd's ability to communicate across cultures and languages enhances his global credibility. His calm, contemplative demeanor, coupled with his scholarly approach to church matters, adds a sense of gravitas to his character. Whether in public addresses or private consultations, he consistently exudes a sense of thoughtful leadership, which endears him to the clergy and laity alike. While Erd is deeply rooted in his European heritage, he also understands the importance of connecting with Catholics across the world. His role as president of the Council of European Bishops' Conferences has positioned him as an important voice in European church politics. His influence extends beyond Hungary, as his diplomatic skill and respect for church teachings give him a strong presence in the Vatican and beyond. 2. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagel, Philippines. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagel of the Philippines is one of the most charismatic and globally influential figures in the Catholic Church today. His warm, approachable nature has earned him the affectionate moniker the Asian Francis, as his pastoral style mirrors that of Pope Francis. He is known for his ability to connect deeply with people from all walks of life, from the poorest members of society to the most powerful leaders in the world. Currently serving as the prefect of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples, Tagel plays a critical role in the Church's mission of spreading the gospel, particularly in the global South. His work focuses on evangelizing diverse cultures and strengthening the faith in countries where Catholicism is growing, especially in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. His commitment to spreading the good news to the marginalized and underserved makes him a beacon of hope for those who often feel excluded from the Church's larger mission. Tagel's theological background is deeply pastoral, with a focus on the human element of faith. He is an advocate for the poor, the homeless, and the marginalized, emphasizing the Church's social teachings on justice, compassion, and solidarity. This advocacy resonates strongly with Catholics who are concerned about issues like economic inequality, poverty, and the treatment of refugees. A key aspect of Cardinal Tagel's appeal is his media-savvy nature. He's comfortable with new technologies and media platforms, using them to communicate effectively with both young people and the wider world. His speeches and homilies are often viral, resonating deeply with listeners due to their emotional intensity and intellectual clarity. Tagel has proven himself to be an adept communicator, able to reach across barriers of language, culture, and distance with ease. Tagel's Asian heritage gives him a unique perspective in the global church, and should he be elected pope, it would mark a historic moment for Catholicism. His election would not only bring a new and dynamic voice to the papacy but also represent a significant shift toward a more global and inclusive church, one that embraces diversity while remaining united in faith. Cardinal Tagel's global appeal is undeniable. His combination of spiritual depth, pastoral care, and charismatic presence would make him not only a historic choice but also one that could inspire Catholics worldwide. His leadership would likely emphasize the Church's universal mission, particularly in regions of the world where the Catholic Church is experiencing rapid growth. 3. Cardinal Matteo Zappi, Italy. Cardinal Matteo Zappi of Italy is one of the most intriguing and compassionate figures among the papal frontrunners. Known for his work in the Sant'Egidio community, a Catholic organization dedicated to peace, charity, and dialogue, Zappi has made a name for himself as a pastoral leader with a progressive yet measured approach. His deep commitment to peace and reconciliation, particularly in areas of conflict, positions him as a figure of hope for a church navigating tumultuous times. Zappi's journey as the Archbishop of Bologna has been marked by a commitment to humility, simplicity, and a focus on the spiritual and material needs of his flock. His leadership style stands in stark contrast to the often rigid and hierarchical approach that the Vatican has been known for in the past. Zappi is approachable, deeply engaged with his community, and grounded in the teachings of the Church, making him a well-respected figure not only in Italy but also in international Catholic circles. Peace diplomacy has been a hallmark of Zappi's career, particularly his efforts to mediate in conflict zones. He has worked with international organizations to advocate for peace in places such as Mozambique and South Sudan. His role as an emissary of peace has earned him respect both within the Vatican and beyond. His approach to diplomacy emphasizes the role of the Church in fostering understanding, dialogue, and healing, all central themes in his broader vision for a more inclusive and compassionate Catholic Church. Zappi's ability to balance tradition with outreach is a defining aspect of his leadership. While he is deeply rooted in the core values of Catholic doctrine, he also understands the importance of engaging with the modern world, especially when it comes to social justice issues, interfaith dialogue, and addressing the needs of the poor. This dual focus could be key in bridging the generational divide within the Church. His pastoral style appeals to a younger generation of Catholics who are looking for a church that is not only doctrinally sound but also actively engaged with the challenges of the contemporary world. A modern, yet traditionalist leader, Cardinal Zappi could represent a middle path between the more conservative and progressive factions of the Church. His ability to speak to both sides of the divide makes him a potentially unifying figure for a church seeking to balance reform with the preservation of its ancient teachings. 4. Cardinal Robert Sarah, Guinea. Cardinal Robert Sarah of Guinea stands as one of the most theologically conservative figures among the papal contenders. His staunch defense of traditional liturgy and African spirituality has garnered both admiration and controversy, making him a pivotal and often polarizing figure in contemporary Catholicism. Known for his outspoken criticisms of Western secularism, Sarah's vision of the Church is one that emphasizes fidelity to sacred tradition and a return to liturgical practices that he believes are central to the faith. As a champion of the Latin Mass and an advocate for traditional Catholic practices, Sarah is a prominent voice in the Church's ongoing debates over liturgical reforms. His views on the sacred nature of the liturgy have resonated with many Catholics who feel that the Church has moved too far from its traditional roots in recent decades. Sarah's defense of liturgical orthodoxy and reverence for the Eucharist has earned him a devoted following, particularly among those who long for a return to a more formal, ritualistic expression of Catholic worship. In addition to his theological conservatism, Cardinal Sarah is a strong critic of the rise of secularism and relativism in the West. He has often spoken about the need for the Church to remain a moral beacon in an increasingly secular world, where religious values are sometimes undermined or dismissed. His bold critiques of modernity, especially regarding issues like the sanctity of life, the family, and the role of the Church in public life, make him a strong voice for those who fear that the Church is becoming too accommodating to secular cultural trends. Sarah's election to the papacy would represent a dramatic shift in the direction of the Catholic Church. It would likely mark a return to a more conservative, traditionalist papacy, one that focuses on preserving doctrinal purity and the reverence of the sacred. For Catholics who view the reformist path championed by figures like Pope Francis with skepticism, Sarah represents a figure who would restore order, clarity, and orthodoxy within the Church. However, it is not just his theological conservatism that makes Sarah a significant papal contender. His African roots are also a key factor in his potential election. As one of the most prominent African cardinals, his rise to the papacy would have profound symbolic significance for the global Church, particularly in Africa, where Catholicism is growing rapidly. Sarah's leadership would signal a shift toward greater influence from the global South, and it would send a powerful message that the Church is looking to Africa and beyond. For future leadership, Cardinal Sarah's election could reshape the Church's trajectory, reinforcing its commitment to sacred tradition while affirming the growing role of African Catholicism on the world stage. His leadership would be marked by a strong commitment to orthodoxy, a focus on traditional liturgy, and a defense of the Church's moral teachings in the face of secular pressures. 5. Cardinal Kristof Sconorn, Austria. Cardinal Kristof Sconorn of Austria is one of the most intellectually respected figures in the Catholic Church. As a renowned theologian and editor of the Catechism of the Catholic Church, he possesses a deep and scholarly understanding of Catholic doctrine. Sconorn's theological credentials are unparalleled, having studied under prominent scholars like Cardinal Hans Urs von Balthasar and being closely involved in shaping the modern understanding of Church teachings. This intellectual depth, paired with his unwavering devotion to the spiritual life, makes him a figure both admired and trusted for his ability to interpret and apply the timeless truths of the Church. While Sconorn has supported Pope Francis and his reforms, he has always maintained a rootedness in traditional doctrine. This careful balancing act between continuity and reform positions him as a consensus builder within the Vatican. Sconorn's approach to church governance emphasizes unity and understanding, allowing him to navigate the delicate tensions within the Church between conservative and progressive factions. His intellectual rigor and spiritual grounding make him a figure who can help guide the Church through periods of change without losing sight of its doctrinal roots. Despite his support for Pope Francis' vision, Sconorn remains deeply committed to the importance of Church tradition. His steady, reasoned approach to theological questions allows him to speak to both the progressive elements seeking reform and the more conservative elements who wish to preserve the Church's ancient teachings. As a moderate figure, his papacy would likely focus on bridging divides while maintaining doctrinal integrity. At 73 years old, Sconorn brings a wealth of wisdom and experience to the table. His age and stature within the Church could position him as a transitional figure, someone who could serve as a bridge between the Pope Francis era and future leadership. In a time of deep reflection on the Church's future, he could offer a steady hand while carefully guiding the Church through its evolving challenges. 6. Cardinal Claude Holleric, Luxembourg. Cardinal Claude Holleric of Luxembourg is quickly emerging as one of the most influential figures in the Church, particularly among those who champion reform. As the Relator General of the Synod on Synodality, he has played a central role in shaping the discussions around the future of the Church and its relationship to both its members and the world. His position within the Synod has given him a unique vantage point on the diverse needs and perspectives within the Church, particularly concerning issues such as ecumenism, women's roles, and the Church's engagement with modernity. Holleric is a staunch intellectual ally of Pope Francis, and his theological and pastoral approach aligns closely with the Pope's vision for a more inclusive, dialogical, and synodal Church. He has spoken openly on controversial issues, embracing open dialogue and advocating for reform within the Church. Holleric's commitment to synodality. The process of governing the Church through consultation and collaboration sets him apart as a figure who sees the future of the Church not in top-down leadership but in a more decentralized, collaborative model. His views on controversial topics like same-sex unions, gender equality, and the role of women in the Church have earned him both support and criticism. However, his willingness to engage in open dialogue, even on sensitive issues, has positioned him as a leader who is not afraid to tackle the tough questions. Holleric has stated that the Church must adapt to the challenges of the modern world without compromising its core doctrines. This balanced approach to reform has made him a key player in the ongoing conversation about the future of the Church under Pope Francis' successor. If the Church seeks to continue Pope Francis' path, emphasizing compassion, dialogue, and openness, Cardinal Holleric could be a natural successor. His papacy would likely continue to emphasize a more decentralized church, focusing on local pastoral needs, ecumenism, and social justice issues. As a member of the European Union, he would also bring a global perspective that resonates with Catholics across Europe and beyond, particularly in the context of interfaith dialogue and European values. 7. Cardinal Peter Turkson, Ghana. Cardinal Peter Turkson of Ghana is one of the most influential African cardinals in the Catholic Church today, and his potential papacy represents a powerful symbol of the Church's growing influence in the global South. As a strong advocate for climate justice, economic reform, and social ethics, Turkson has long been a leading voice within the Vatican on issues of global inequality, poverty, and environmental stewardship. He served as the president of the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace and has been instrumental in pushing for the Church's involvement in global discussions on climate change and economic justice. Turkson's focus on moral theology and social teaching has positioned him as a leading voice for the poor and marginalized. His tenure at the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace was marked by efforts to integrate social justice with the Church's broader teachings, emphasizing that the Church's mission extends far beyond the spiritual to include a robust commitment to human dignity, economic reform, and environmental responsibility. His landmark work on the encyclical Laudato Si on care for creation has earned him respect not only among Catholic leaders but also among global environmental advocates. Turkson's African roots add another layer of significance to his candidacy. As one of the most prominent African cardinals, his election would mark a powerful moment for the Church's future. Africa is the fastest-growing Catholic region in the world, and Turkson's papacy would send a strong message about the Church's connection to the global South, signaling a Church that is more inclusive and reflective of the diverse global realities of the modern world. His leadership could blend orthodoxy with innovation, bringing the Church's social teachings into the 21st century while staying grounded in the doctrinal purity of the Catholic faith. Cardinal Turkson would bring a global perspective to the papacy, one deeply influenced by his experiences as an African cardinal, his commitment to socio-economic justice, and his vision for a more inclusive, ethical Church that speaks to the needs of people across all continents. 8. Cardinal Mark Owlet, Canada. Cardinal Mark Owlet, hailing from Canada, is one of the most well-known and long-standing contenders for the papacy, often described as Papal, a term used to refer to someone seen as popeable. Having served as the head of the Congregation for Bishops, Owlet has had significant influence in shaping the leadership of the Church around the world. His tenure in this role allowed him to become intimately familiar with the governance structures of the Church and the selection of bishops, granting him considerable administrative experience. Owlet's approach to leadership is characterized by a conservative outlook rooted in Catholic doctrine but also tempered by a willingness to engage in dialogue. He is neither rigidly traditional nor overtly reformist, making him a moderate figure who can navigate the complex dynamics between traditionalists and those seeking more progressive reforms. He understands the need for pastoral care, particularly when it comes to the challenges faced by the Church in modern times, including issues surrounding marriage, family life, and ecumenism. His North American background offers a fresh cultural perspective, especially for a papacy that could speak to both the Anglophone and Francophone worlds. As Archbishop of Quebec, he has been deeply involved in the cultural and pastoral life of North America, an area where the Church is seeking new ways to engage its followers in a secularized society. Owlet's leadership could be a bridge between the more traditional cultures of Europe and the rapidly changing religious landscapes of North America, making him a figure capable of speaking to a global Catholic audience. Though regarded as a conservative, his deep understanding of Church doctrine and unwavering commitment to the traditional teachings of the Church place him firmly within the doctrinal camp of potential papal candidates. However, his openness to discussion and willingness to seek pastoral solutions where needed make him a leader who can potentially navigate the Church's many divisions in the modern world. 9. Cardinal Leonardo Sandre, Argentina. Cardinal Leonardo Sandre of Argentina brings an exceptional level of expertise in ecumenism, diplomacy, and the liturgical life of the Church, particularly in relation to the Eastern rites. Having previously served as the prefect of the Congregation for the Eastern Churches, Sandre is deeply versed in the complexities of Latin and Eastern Christian traditions, making him an ideal candidate to foster stronger unity between these branches of Catholicism. His knowledge of the Catholic East gives him a broad and inclusive understanding of the universal Church. In addition to his liturgical and theological depth, Sandre has proven himself to be a skilled diplomat and administrator, working across cultural and geopolitical lines to ensure global harmony within the Church. His experience working with a wide variety of Eastern Catholic churches and Christian denominations has helped him build a reputation for ecumenical leadership, which would be highly valuable in a pope tasked with continuing the ecumenical mission set out by Pope John Paul II and Pope Francis. Sandre's Argentine roots are particularly significant as they align closely with those of Pope Francis, potentially allowing for a continuation of the papacy's Latin American identity. However, his election could also represent a subtle evolution in leadership, as he is not directly tied to Pope Francis' reforms in the same way other potential successors might be. Instead, Sandre's diplomatic skills, ecumenical experience, and deep faith offer a path for the Church to build upon Francis' legacy while pushing forward with its broader mission of global unity and church reform. Moreover, Sandre's background could be seen as a counterbalance to the dominance of European leadership in the Vatican, bringing fresh perspectives from South America, which is home to the largest population of Catholics in the world. His selection would likely strengthen the Global South's presence in the Vatican and be seen as a significant step forward in representing the Church's diverse cultural roots. 10. Cardinal Wilton Gregory, United States. Cardinal Wilton Gregory of the United States is not only a groundbreaking figure in the history of the Catholic Church but also a powerful voice for justice and inclusivity. As the first African-American cardinal, Gregory's rise to prominence is itself a historic milestone within the Church, signaling the potential for a more inclusive, diverse leadership at the highest levels. His leadership in the U.S. Church has already made waves, particularly as he has become a leading advocate for racial justice, healing divisions, and promoting unity. Gregory's past leadership as the Archbishop of Washington, D.C. has been marked by a pastoral focus on social justice issues, especially those related to race relations and the Church's role in addressing inequality. His strong stance on racial reconciliation within the U.S. Church has won him respect, particularly among young Catholics and those seeking a church that actively addresses issues of racial and social injustice. Gregory's moral authority on these issues makes him a compelling figure in a church that is grappling with questions of equity and social engagement in the modern world. Though Gregory might be seen as somewhat of an outsider in terms of traditional Vatican circles, his election would be a seismic cultural shift, one that would resonate deeply with Catholics in the United States and around the world. His selection would not only signify a shift towards greater inclusivity but also offer a powerful symbol of unity in a time of deep division, particularly with respect to racial issues. It would send a message that the Church is moving toward a more inclusive and globally representative leadership. His election could also be seen as a symbol of hope for marginalized communities both inside and outside the Church, affirming the notion that the Church is for all people, regardless of race, culture, or background. Gregory's leadership could bring a renewed sense of compassion, unity, and justice to a church in search of deeper healing and greater relevance in the modern age. The upcoming papal conclave will undoubtedly be a momentous event, shaped by a variety of factors beyond simple demographics such as age or nationality. As the Church stands at a crossroads in its 2,000-year history, the next pope will be tasked with guiding the Catholic Church through an increasingly complex and divided world. This conclave will not only reflect the vitality and direction of the Church but also its response to an evolving global context. Continuity with Pope Francis' reformist tone? One of the most prominent questions surrounding the election of the next pope is whether the Church will continue in the direction set by Pope Francis, particularly in terms of his pastoral reforms and inclusive tone. His papacy has been defined by a focus on social justice, environmental issues, and dialogue with other religions. Pope Francis has made significant efforts to make the Church more approachable, addressing controversial issues such as divorce, LGBTQ rights, and the role of women in the Church. Several of the papal candidates, particularly those with ties to the Latin American continent, may favor continuing these reformist initiatives. Leaders like Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagel and Cardinal Leonardo Sandre embody this vision of a pastoral, dialogue-driven church, one that aims to remain relevant in a modern world that often feels disconnected from its ancient teachings. If the next pope leans towards this path, the legacy of Pope Francis will continue to shape the Church's mission, focusing on mercy, solidarity, and a global view that acknowledges the pluralism of modern societies. The return to conservatism and tradition? Alternatively, there is the possibility that the next papacy may see a return to more traditional, conservative values. Over the past decades, certain segments of the Catholic Church have expressed a desire for doctrinal clarity and a reassertion of traditional practices. Figures like Cardinal Robert Sarah and Cardinal Peter Erd represent this vision. Sarah, in particular, has been outspoken against what he perceives as the erosion of sacred traditions and Western secularism. His election would mark a sharp turn towards reaffirming the Church's traditional liturgy, emphasizing the importance of the sacraments, doctrinal purity, and a strong stance on moral issues such as abortion, contraception, and gender roles. This shift would likely attract conservative Catholics who feel the Church has strayed too far from its core teachings. In a time of growing secularism, a conservative papacy might feel that returning to tradition would offer spiritual clarity and moral direction in the face of modern challenges. It could also signal a recommitment to the values of the pre-Vatican II Church, especially on issues such as gender roles, sexual ethics, and the relationship between the Church and state. The geographic axis: Asia, Africa, Latin America. Perhaps one of the most defining aspects of this conclave will be the geographic considerations that weigh heavily in choosing the next pope. For centuries, the papacy has been dominated by leaders from Europe, particularly Italy. However, with Catholicism's demographic shift away from Europe and towards Asia, Africa, and Latin America, the selection of a non-European pope is increasingly likely. For instance, the election of a cardinal from Africa, such as Cardinal Robert Sarah or Cardinal Peter Turkson, would not only represent a historic first in terms of geographic diversity but also acknowledge the significant growth of the Church on the African continent. These cardinals are leaders who embody African Catholicism's unique identity, which blends traditional spirituality with an urgent call for economic and environmental justice. Their papacy would underscore a more global vision, one that embraces the African Church's vibrancy and its growing influence in global Catholicism. Alternatively, a cardinal from Asia, like Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagel, would highlight the expansion of the Church in Asia, a region where the Church is growing rapidly despite significant religious pluralism. An Asian pope would reflect a global Church more representative of its membership, which is increasingly centered in the global South. The appointment of a pope from Asia would also align with a pastoral approach, one that resonates deeply with the poor and marginalized, particularly in regions where economic disparity remains a significant challenge. Finally, a papacy from Latin America would continue the legacy of Pope Francis, whose roots are in Argentina. The Latin American Church has been at the forefront of liberation theology, focusing on issues of social justice and human rights. A Latin American pope would bring a deep understanding of the Church's role in shaping societies where poverty and inequality are rampant, making such a selection highly symbolic for the Church's future direction. The Church's future, a global, unified vision. Regardless of which direction the conclave takes, it is clear that these 10 cardinals each represent a distinct vision for the future of the Church, a future that spans centuries and continents. As the Church faces challenges from within and without, its next leader will need to navigate complex theological issues, manage the Church's global presence, and address the real-world concerns of its followers. Whether the future lies in continuity with Pope Francis' reformist vision, a return to traditional orthodoxy, or a more geographically diverse leadership, the next pope will inherit the monumental task of leading the Catholic Church into a new era. In the end, the Church's universal mission will guide the conclave's decision. A leader will be chosen who can speak with compassion to the faithful around the world, offering a vision of unity, faithfulness, and hope for generations to come. The stakes are high, and the Church's future is on the line, with each of these 10 men poised to shape what that future will look like for Catholics everywhere.